I would like to bring in our third podcast member here. This is Shay Bonhag, a member of the comms team and prolific writer on all things, especially all the ways that the feds have frittered away our money. Thanks for being here today, Shay.
Glad to be here.
All right. Well, I know Sarah's got a topic for us today.
I've got two topics. We're going to start with one of them. There is a lot of discussion nationwide regarding potentially getting rid of various federal departments and agencies. Two prominent examples that we're hearing of this are the Department of Education and USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. Now, whether these departments will ultimately be closed or have their responsibilities transferred to other departments or simply stay largely as they are now remains to be seen. In view of all this, the U.S. House of Representatives held an oversight hearing where they heard testimony from Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, which you see pictured here. Governor Reynolds testified about the significant structural government changes Iowa put in place in 2023. At that time, they eliminated 21 of their 37 cabinet-level agencies, as well as 600 open positions and 1,200 regulations. They also identified over 4,000 acres of state-owned property to sell. Since then, they have eliminated 1/3 of their boards and commissions and have saved $217 million in 18 months, over twice their projected savings when they started this. Governor Reynolds testified that these changes have resulted in a government that is much better and more efficient. They say they did DOGE before there was a DOGE, but before even there was Iowa DOGE, there was Obama's DOGE. We like to think of this as just being a current thing, I think, but it really isn't. This concept of government efficiency, it's not new. In June of 2011, President Barack Obama signed an executive order titled Delivering an Efficient, Effective, and Accountable Government. In this executive order, he outlined, eliminating waste, improving efficiency, and allowing for transparency. My computer's being weird. And holding executive departments and agencies accountable for obtaining results consistent with their mission. In that same executive order, he said, there is hereby established a Government Accountability and Transparency Board to provide strategic direction for enhancing the transparency of federal spending and advancing efforts to detect and remediate fraud, waste, abuse in federal programs. He appointed a director to provide guidance to agencies as part of the fiscal year's budget for identifying areas of programs that overlapped or had duplication across agencies and to propose consolidations and to reduce basically those inefficiencies. The following year, he announced a proposal to reform, reorganize, and consolidate government. He said, I am calling on Congress to reinstate the authority that past presidents have had to streamline and reform the executive branch. This is the same sort of authority that every business owner has to make sure that his or her company keeps pace with the times. And let me be clear, I will only use this authority to reform the result in more efficiency, better service, and a leaner government. So this concept, and we don't need the slides anymore, the concept of efficiency in government and just really paring things down, be that consolidating departments and so on and so forth, has been, well, let's just say it's not a recent thing. This has been a bipartisan effort across a whole lot of years. And this has kind of been driving us to this particular point in history as different people have tried to do this. What are your thoughts on these particular areas, Shay? Do you think this holds promise with regards to our future in consolidating the waste in government?
You know, thank you for sharing those executive orders. I had not read them as you've indicated them up on the screen. That's really helpful, because we know that private industry has been doing this sort of thing for years to try to get things under control. But I had not I hadn't seen the executive order. I knew that Obama had talked like that and had mentioned that he wanted to do something about the efficiency. So that's really good to know. Great background. Thank you for sharing that.
Now, Robin, one of the main concerns that I think people have when they see kind of the chaos to some extent that's going on right now in our government, because there is a degree of chaos.
Sure.
There's all kinds of people getting fired, all kinds of things are happening. For some of our viewers, this is a welcome change, and for some, it's not a welcome change. For those to whom it is not a welcome change, what do we do if they eliminate a department in the government that we in fact need? What is the governmental solution that we have?
Governmental solution. I'm not sure I'm the right person to address that. I'm not a constitutionalist. Let's take, for example, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was shuttered. I'm not sure that's a good idea. I'm just say personally that I know that they help people. However, that agency was created in the beginning, why can't you go back and put it back? Whether it was created through Congress or, not my favorite thing, but an executive order to put it back. You know, I understand people being very uncomfortable with all these layoffs, and I've watched the protests outside the White House of people being laid off. As you pointed out, this government efficiency and layoffs from the government have actually happened through time. I found an article in Forbes magazine. Harry Truman laid off, reduced, changed the federal government minus 566,000. Clinton, 339,000. Eisenhower, and this was a drawdown after the war, 170,000. George H.W. Bush, 66,000. Streamlining the government, reducing the size of the personnel is something that goes on. If you look at these numbers, the numbers increase if we've been in a wartime. Then they decrease, or they decrease because, like any business or even any household, when you're not bringing in enough money, you have to cut expenses. It's a shame when it's people, of course. But those people can move on and do something else. They have skills that they have developed. So it's hard. And I empathize with the chaos. I like, personally, I like certainty. It's got to be horrible if you know your job hangs in the balance. I read of a particular interest story last night of a woman here in Michigan who works for the Forestry Service, and she's devastated to lose this job. It was a move that she made a couple years ago. She's just about to complete her probationary period. Maybe they'll call her back. I mean, it's uncomfortable. Change is always uncomfortable. And like you said, some people like it. Some people are not happy. Some people just don't like change, and there's uncertainty. I mean, I've never looked at the accounting of the government. I've never been in those offices to see. But we simply can't keep spending what we don't have.
Mm-hmm. 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 So basically what you're saying is if they screw it up, we can just put it back in place.
Yeah, and that actually happened this past week with Department of Energy, the nuclear energy folks. They threw them all out and then said, "Whoops! Wait a minute, we made a mistake. We should not have done that." And they brought them back in. But and industry has done the same thing. You know, when IBM did this layoff, massive layoff some time ago, they brought in consultants or kept certain people on the staff, or they brought consultants in to help them. So I think that's part of the equation. And I know from what Robin is saying, it is painful to lose your job. There's no question about that. But in the long scope of things, we've got to do something about the total costs. We can't keep going the way we are. We can't keep spending more money than we have, and we can't keep borrowing. So
we can't keep taxing people into oblivion.
Right. The COS mantra is let's find a way to balance the budget. Let's get some logic in place that we spend what we have and we don't spend other than that. Right. So in the long term, we've got to look at it that way, I think, and say, yeah, I know it's painful for some that are losing their positions, but long term, this is where we need to be. It's really, I mean, I feel for them. You know, we've all had situations where we've lost our employment or our,
Yeah. And you're right, Chet. Thank you for joining us today. You're absolutely right. Layoffs is something that every ordinary American has to deal with, the potential of a layoff.
Yeah.
That is part of regular life. It's never fun. It's never wonderful. But I think there is some comfort to understanding that if they truly screw up the government, we can just put departments back in place.
Yeah.
You can.
Or the function. Or at least the function.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You made the point about.
Go ahead, Robin.
Well, I was going to say, you made the point about some people are happy about this and some people are not happy, and change is uncomfortable. I think for me, as a Convention of States volunteer, I understand what we're trying to do to limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government and to exercise some fiscal restraint. So while this seems to be happening very quickly and it's unnerving, those of us here, like me, I might come across very excited, concerned, but excited about what is all of this, because this is part of what Convention of States would like to see. Now, Trump and whoever can issue all their orders, executive orders, and make all this stuff happen. 4 years from now, if Trump or Trump 2 is not elected, the next president can come in and can change all of this. So this isn't a lasting solution.
Correct. That's why we need a convention, because if we can get to some solutions about term limits and balancing the budget or somehow handling the budget so that people can anticipate, you've got to live within this budget for the future, then you're not in this crisis mode. I mean, if you could look at it longer term and say, we now have a constitutional amendment that says we're going to balance the budget, for instance, then everybody knows what game they're playing when they pass bills of payment or set up all kinds of programs that are going to cost us a fortune, right? They know that has to come from somewhere, and it's not going to happen easily.
What I would say to the people who are upset and uncomfortable or angry about what's going on right now, to seriously give Conventions of States a thorough look. Give it your consideration. If you don't want to see something like this happen again in your lifetime or your grandchild's lifetime, then what we need is a permanent solution. And that happens through an Article 5 convention, where all of the states get together and hash it out. We want to propose this amendment and that amendment. I earlier said we have 19 states and we have to get to 34, and we've got 18 in action. Gosh, it feels like, wow, this could happen by summertime. Yeah, probably not. In all reality, that gives all of us time to thoroughly look at this and have our voice heard by going to the local legislators and telling them what you want and what's acceptable for us, to make recommendations. It's not it's not the end of the world. There is a solution if you're ready to dig in.
Yeah,
Well,
I like your point, Robin. If we had a convention of states already done and we had that constitutional amendment, we'd know what the game plan is, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't be in this position with anybody having to lose a job because we wouldn't head down that path.
Right.
So long term, that's the right solution.
I think there's a bit of ambiguity for most people as to how a convention of states actually can solve this problem.